Just over a year since he was sworn in as Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon is celebrating another cut to the OCR as a sign his government's policies are turning the economic tide. But at the same time, unemployment continues to rise, growth is stagnant, and the path back to a fiscal surplus is looking uncertain. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, kia ora, good morning.
Good to be with you, Jack.
I'll break this interview into two parts. We'll do the economy first and then we'll do some other stuff in the second part. So how do you assess New Zealand's economic trajectory?
Look, it's been a really tough time, no doubt about it, over the last year. Essentially what we're dealing with is relearning some economic laws around spending and inflation and interest rates and growth and unemployment. We've made some good progress around the cost of living, getting inflation back down, getting interest rates down. We've got good levels of consumer confidence, highest it's been in 3 years. High levels of business confidence, highest it's been in a decade. Now we've got to translate that into growth and obviously employment, and that's the real challenge. But that's the exciting part too, because genuinely I feel very optimistic that we can have a great future, we can build back a better economy. Yes, there'll be some turbulence, yes, there's still some tough decisions, but yeah, it's all about growth and it's all about jobs.
It's all about growth, and you've said that growth and productivity is the key to our economic prosperity. So the International Monetary Fund records GDP growth data for 190 countries. According to the latest figures, where just roughly would you expect New Zealand to sit?
Oh, I mean, we've been flat to negative actually for the last 3 years essentially, and that is a function of high interest rates because of high inflation, because of poor financial management.
So where would you expect us to sit? 190 countries, just roughly?
I wouldn't know, but I would just say to you, I know where we are, which is that it's negative and flat.
So currently, according to the International Monetary Fund, out of 190 countries, New Zealand is 179th. Not just lower growth than Australia, Canada, France, Singapore, those countries we compare ourselves to, but lower growth than Guinea-Bissau, Suriname, Chad, lower growth than Iraq under Prime Minister Christopher Luxon. Why is that?
Well, look, again, what I'd just say to you is we've kind of forgotten the immutable laws of economics, I'd say, that we learned 35 years ago. And we've taken good economic management for granted. When you go spend 84% increase in spending, when you drive up inflation domestically, you have to then take interest rates up. When you take interest rates, you've put the economy into recession. And when the economy's in recession, it leads to unemployment. And that's why we've always said, if you actually care about working New Zealanders, you actually are fiscal conservatives. You actually run the economy well, because the pain is ultimate unemployment. And that's what we've actually been seeing, Jack, the last 3 to 6 months, is the lag effect of that. If you're a business that's hung in there with high inflation, high interest rates, suppressed demand, the last thing you're left with is actually laying workers off, and we've seen some of that this year. So that's why we've got to get, we're working our way through those 5 components, but you've got to work through them sequentially so that you get the show going.
So which countries didn't experience an inflation spike during COVID?
Well, ours was longer because we kept printing cash.
So that wasn't my question. My question was, which countries didn't?
Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, what I'm focused on is New Zealand.
Basically all countries on Earth.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
all countries on Earth had inflation. All developed economies are bringing inflation down now, but for some reason New Zealand's 179th out of 190, worse than we were 12 months ago.
Yeah, and that's why we're working so hard, Jack, to make sure that we actually deal with the cost of living through getting inflation and interest rates right. Now that means confidence is building. That confidence has to translate into economic growth. You've got forecasts, I think, from the RBNZ I saw this week suggesting that we might be growing 2 to 2.4% next year. That's good. It's a start. It's better than where we've been, which is flat to negative growth.
So you blame the previous government on the situation in New Zealand.
But now we own it, and now we're working hard in 12 months, and we've been working really hard to actually make sure we put disciplined spending in place.
Yeah.
That has been a key component to monetary policy to get inflation back down.
Sorry, just let me ask a question here. So I appreciate the political convenience of blaming the last government.
Well, it's not really. It's just the reality of it.
Well, we're in December 2024. Like I say, inflation's coming around in basically every comparable economy in the world. I think everyone would appreciate that a bit of an impact on growth at the start of your parliamentary term might be understandable. But the curious thing is that the forecasts around growth have continued to worsen. So take this week's monetary policy statement. The forecasts are for even slower economic growth than the monetary policy statement was forecasting in August, when you'd already been in the job for 9 months. So why do the forecasts keep getting worse under your government?
I would just say to you, Jack, I think all New Zealanders know it's been a pretty tough time and we've inherited a hell of a mess. And I think what you've seen in 12 months...
Including the economists, right? So the economists, the Reserve Bank, the Treasury, for example, all of your staff, they know exactly the kind of fiscal situation you inherited. And yet, while you've been in government, the forecasts have been worse. So look at that MPS in August. They gave us growth forecasts. And in the time since August, those forecasts have gotten worse under your leadership.
And
so why is that?
Well, again, what I'm saying is you have to take your medicine. You actually have to work through the economy, and that's what we're doing. You get spending under control, as we've been doing. We haven't thrown the economy into austerity. We've got a very balanced approach to that.
You're not answering my question. My question is, why does it get worse under your government?
Because you actually have to work your way sequentially through spending, inflation, interest rates, growth.
But all of the economists appreciate that, and yet for some reason the forecasts keep getting worse.
Well, the forecasts are forecasts. The reality is we get to change those forecasts if we do the right things. That's what we want to do as a government.
Forecasts are forecasts. You said, quote, our job is to make sure we do better than the forecast.
That's right.
You said in the lead up to last year's election. So can you point to any medium-term GDP growth forecast that has improved during your time in charge?
No, what I'd say to you, we still acknowledge we've got tough times. The forecasts around economic growth will be a consequence of the decisions we make around spending, inflation and interest rates.
Just to get an answer on that question, though, can you point to any medium-term GDP growth forecast that has improved under your leadership?
Our forecasts are really challenged and they have deteriorated.
So just to be totally clear on that question, though, can you point to any medium-term GDP growth forecast that's improved under your leadership?
Not from memory that I can see, but what I can tell you, Jack, is...
You can't?
No, but what I want you to be really clear about is it's all very well, but you had 6 years of economic mismanagement.
You're the CEO. You're the guy with the 100-day plan. You're the guy who said we're going to turn the economy around. And the truth is,
and isn't it great,
that under your leadership, the forecasts have continued to deteriorate.
But isn't it great that we've actually lowered inflation, food inflation?
Well, I mean, like I said, every comparable country in the world has lowered inflation.
Mortgage rates coming down in the way that we have after, 12 rate rises, we've got 3 rate cuts.
Wasn't it great that the previous government was bringing down inflation as well? Wasn't it great that every single comparable economy around the world...
If you carried on spending as the previous government did, you wouldn't have seen inflation or interest rates come down this year.
Let's talk about the surplus. So you absolutely hammered the previous government for pushing back the surplus track. I dug out a press release from when you were in opposition. Quote, Grant Robertson's credibility problem. New Zealand will experience another year of deficits because Labor is failing to deliver the economic growth New Zealand needs. Now, you've already pushed back your surplus track by 1 year from your pre-election promise. Are you still committed to returning the books to surplus in 2027, 2028?
Well, we have to fix the books. There's no doubt about that. That's what we're doing. We're doing that in a very balanced way. We're making sure that we get reprioritised savings deployed to the front line. We give people tax relief. Working New Zealanders have benefited from that, which is fantastic. And we've obviously got to create the conditions for investment and for future growth.
That's nice. That's not my question, of course. My question was, are you still committed to returning the books to surplus in 2027, 2028?
We are committed to getting to surplus, but we're going to get a revised forecast very shortly, as you know.
That sounds like a no.
Well, no, we're going to get a revised forecast. And in fairness, I can't comment on what that forecast will be, given Haifu happens just before Christmas.
If it was a credibility problem for Grant Robertson, why is it not a credibility problem?
Well, I'd just say it was a credibility problem because for 6 years in a row, he overspent his operating allowance by $600 million on average.
And why is it not a credibility problem for you? If you promised originally that you were going to get us back to surplus next year, 2025, 2026, then you pushed it back a year, and it sounds like you might be pushing it back one more year. So if it's a credibility problem for him, why is it not a credibility problem for the economic manager?
We are working our way through and doing the right things. We are making sure we've got good, disciplined government spending. We're making sure that we've got inflation now within the band, first time in 3.5 years. You've had 3 interest rate cuts in 12 months. That's fantastic. You've got rising confidence at annual highs, right? In the last 3 years, consumer business.
Question of credibility.
Now we see growth. That's what we've got to do.
We're not seeing growth. We're actually, again, you can't point to any growth forecast
Jack, it's
that's
somewhat
improved.
naive, to be honest with you, to say, look, we had 6 years of economic mismanagement, and in 12 months we're supposed to fix that all.
Well, it's somewhat naive to say that the previous government had a credibility problem because they pushed the surplus track back.
6 years in government.
When you're doing exactly the same thing.
We've had 12 months.
So you've had the books, your hands on the books for more than 12 months. By my accounting, you've had a pre-fu, you've had a high-fu, you've had a budget, you've had 5 monetary policy statements. You've had the full expertise and resource of the Treasury at your disposal for more than 12 months, and yet you are now softening us up for delaying surplus by another year. Wouldn't an economically literate government have worked this out a bit sooner?
Oh, Jack, I just say to you, economic management under this government is in a hell of a better shape than what we would have seen under the previous administration carrying on. How on earth do you spend 84% more money? How do you now spend $9 billion in a debt bill that we have to pay on interest rates?
And how
do you tax more,
do you not answer my question there? Sorry.
I think it's a bit unfair to say that we are doing the job of sound economic management.
What I'm asking is why you didn't work this out sooner, because you've had all of that data available, right? All of the high-fu, the pre-fu, the budget, the 5 monetary policy statements, and now it's only now in December 2024 that you're saying, oh, hang on, we might not be coming back to surplus.
Let's talk about it, right? So we got the high-fu after we came to power 12 months ago, right? Just before Christmas last year. Immediately, we've generated about $7 billion worth of savings and adjustment in government spending at that point in time, mini budget essentially. We came through to the budget in May. You saw us actually generate $23 billion worth of savings and reprioritisations. And now we'll go through to a high food before Christmas. We know it's incredibly tough. We know it's still turbulent.
You've walked around that though. My question is, you've had all of this information available, and yet you, as the party that promised that tells everyone about your economic management...
Just say it.
Hang on, I haven't even asked a question. So I'll just ask a question if that's okay. You've only just worked out now that we can't return to surplus.
I'm not saying that. We're going to see a haifu come before Christmas. But what I'm saying to you is it is challenging times for New Zealand. It has been a very, very tough year. You don't just go screw up the economy in 6 years and then write it all in 12 months.
No, but when you've got all that economic data available, you would expect an economically literate government to work out
and
the
isn't it
surplus
great
rate might be pushed
that
back.
actually the things we are doing, when you think about tax relief for lower middle income working New Zealanders, family boost payments, when you think about working for family credits that we've increased through the budget, through the reprioritisations, through the savings, that is actually helping lower middle income working New Zealanders.
Let's talk about those people. So relative to the rest of the population, are the poorest people in New Zealand better or worse off today than when you took power?
They are getting better off under a national...
They're better off...
under our government.
No, yep. Are they better off relative to the rest of the population?
They are better off than they were 12 months ago. Because
relative to the rest of the population?
Food price inflation is down.
Sorry, Prime Minister, the question is, relative to the rest of the population, are the poorest people in New Zealand better off than when you took power?
I'd say the poorest people, all New Zealanders, are doing better under this government than they were 12 months ago.
Of course, that's not the question I asked. The question is relative to the rest of the population.
Well, I think there's been, I think that we've got challenges about making sure we get people off welfare into work and into proper jobs and high-paying jobs.
Still not an answer, though, is it? Sorry, that's still not an answer. The question is, relative to the rest of the population, are they better or worse off?
I don't know, but I presume it's no change. I would say to you that
there has been a change. So the very latest data we have is from the 2023-24 New Zealand Health Survey, published this week. It shows that in the months leading up to the end of July, compared to last year, the number of kids who live in households where food runs out has increased from about 1 in 5 to more than 1 in 4. So the poorest have got poorer by that measure.
Well, I'll just say to you, we've seen a situation where we passed a budget that actually the Treasury assessed will lift 17,000 more kids out of child poverty. In the last year of Labor, because of high inflation and high interest rates in a recession, 23,000 more kids were put into poverty.
So Treasury analysed that budget, and they analysed your tax cuts and tax credit initiatives. They found that the 20% of households with the lowest incomes saw their incomes increase by $13 a week. For the richest 20%, it was 3 times that.
Well, I'll just say to you, our tax relief package has been actually really successful. We've been able to deliver tax relief to 94% of Kiwis, 3.5 million Kiwis.
The point is, though,
that is a good thing. Alongside the relief
the poor have
that
got poorer under your tax package.
Well, just say to you, what we've
relative to the rest of the population.
But what I'd say to you, Jack,
you're saying a lot of things to me, but you're not answering.
You're
not
letting me actually answer, to be honest. And this is actually kind of important to actually, if you want to have a conversation about economics and the plan and what we're trying to do.
I just want to understand why the poor people in New Zealand. You can explain to us, why are the poor, under your leadership, why are the poorest people in New Zealand poorer relative to the rest of New Zealanders than they were when you took over?
I disagree. I think New Zealanders are better off than they were 12 months ago under our government. Secondly, I'd say
Can you give me any evidence?
We are lifting 17,000.
Sorry, I keep on asking relative to the rest of the population. Can you give me any evidence, since you disagree, that the poorest New Zealanders are better off relative to where they were 12 months ago?
Yes, we have a budget in 2024 where 17,000 more children are going to get lifted out of poverty as a function of the decisions that our government has taken to lower the cost of living. Here's an example for you, right? We've taken costs out of businesses, farmers, landlords. You would give me a lot of grief about a landlord tax, as you would call it, in previous interviews.
I've never called it a landlord tax.
But the reality is
please, tell me, where have I called it a landlord tax?
We've unwinded interest deductibility.
Where have I called it a landlord tax?
You've talked a lot to me about landlord interest deductibility in the past, right? And that's fair enough. But what I'm just saying to you, restoring interest deductibility, dealing with the bright line, getting the tenancy laws right, we haven't had a single rent increase. It's been stable rents over the last 12 months versus $180 per week under the previous administration.
I will ask about that in a moment. So in the election campaign...
Right? If you think about the emergency...
Sorry, can I just ask a question?
No, but you asked me for some examples of actually about the poorest New Zealanders. I asked you for proof that
the poorest New Zealanders were better off relative to the rest of the population.
Think about the kids that we've lifted out of emergency motel accommodation in a very short period of time. That's something I'm really proud about, because we would talk about that for a decade before.
So you mentioned child poverty, right? So in the election campaign, you said you were committed to our child poverty targets. I think in the News Hub Leaders debate with Paddy, you said absolutely we're committed to them. The latest child poverty report shows we are way off track. we're heading in the wrong direction.
Yep.
Are you still committed to hitting the current targets?
Well, what we've done is, as I said to you, that last year of Labor, because of the recession and because
Prime Minister. No, if you could answer that, then if you can
Jack,
just give me a straight answer on that, and then you can
Jack,
give
it's
some
kind
justification.
of because I was just giving you a justification for why targets have been adjusted, right? Which is that we're 23,000.
Sorry, they've been adjusted?
Do you want me to finish, or how?
Well, can you tell us that point? Have they been adjusted?
23,000 more kids were put on.
Sorry, have they been adjusted?
I'm about to explain that to you, Jack. So just if can you hang fire and just let me get it out and let me answer without interruption. 23,000 more kids ended up in child poverty in that last year under Labor because of the recession and because of inflation, right? Bad impacts. What we've done is we've actually said, right, that target is unrealistic. There's an adjustment around the material hardship target, and also we want to get more kids out of benefit-dependent homes. We had a perverse situation where actually under low unemployment, 60,000 more people ended up on unemployment benefit, 40,000 more kids in benefit-dependent homes, and that's not the answer. The answer is to beat inflation, to grow the economy, and to get people out off welfare and to work. That's what our budget has been designed to do, in lifting 17,000 more kids out of child poverty. So we're committed to the child poverty targets and the metrics, but the reality is... The metrics, but we've had to readjust because when you take over... and you actually look at where the previous government was, there has been a slight adjustment.
Right, yeah. So despite committing to those child poverty targets, when you're in the election campaign, you've actually changed the targets.
Well, because
that's true, right?
But isn't it real? You have to face up to the brutal facts of your reality, whether you like it or not. And the reality is 23,000 more kids in the last 12 months of the last government ended up in poverty, and we've had to adjust that target. Now, we are determined to do two things. One is to focus on kids that are in material hardship, and the second thing is kids that are in benefit-dependent homes. And that's why we're trying to work hard to get people off welfare into work.
So you talked about the tax changes you made and the tax incentives that you've adjusted for residential property investment.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was a priority for your government. Why haven't you changed the tax incentives for something more productive? Why haven't you changed the corporate tax rate?
Again, we've been working our way through the situation that we've inherited, focusing on the must-do things that we've got to get right. And for right now, that hasn't been our focus.
You'd agree that would be a more productive asset class, right? Investing in businesses relative to investment properties.
Absolutely, and that will be a big focus for us.
Why wouldn't you prioritise that over tax changes to investment properties?
Well, no, but we have.
We haven't, have you? Because you haven't changed the corporate tax rate.
But you belittle the tax changes to the investment properties, right? And you talk about it a lot. But I just say to you, that's been a very positive thing.
Productivity, right? I've asked about productivity. You've just told me that changing the corporate tax rate would lead to greater productivity. You've said productivity is your number one.
Well, no, there's several.
Your number one priority while in government, and you prioritise the tax changes.
So let's talk about productivity because it is really important. It's the biggest problem that New Zealand's faced for 30 years. That we're all working incredibly hard, and yet we can't get ahead. And I just say to you, there are many things you have to do, not just in tax policy, but in many things.
But on that tax policy, you definitely prioritised a non-productive class.
And isn't that great? Because it actually leads to stable rents. After rents going up $180 a week under
it's not if you want to improve productivity, though.
No, but in this case, Jack, it was about helping working New Zealanders and the poorest New Zealanders, and that's a good outcome.
In your assessment, are Crown-Māori relations better or worse today than when you took over?
Oh, look, I think there's more division. I think it's a challenging time at the moment. There's no doubt about it. There's strong feeling on all sides of that debate. I think it's been building for some time. I think, to be honest, the Labor government got a lot wrong and didn't take people with them. When you think about, creating a separate Māori health authority, the co-governance stuff we saw on Three Waters pre the election, all of those things, Wellington mandated Māori local wards, that created huge amounts of frustration across the country.
You said there's more division. Just to get a really clear answer on that, better or worse today than when you took over?
Probably worse in terms of, I think there are strong feelings on all sides of that debate. But that frustration was created by some pretty horrendous decisions under Ardern and Hipkins that didn't take New Zealand.
Arguably, some of your decisions have contributed.
Yeah, but
let's just do some accounting. So you have scrapped the Māori Health Authority.
Yep.
You've prioritised changing government department names from Māori into English. You've cut funding to Māori language training for teachers, even though an independent report found the program had overwhelmingly positive feedback. You've cut matariki funding by almost half. You have removed standard Māori consultation for fast-track projects. You've cancelled the smoke-free generation, even though public health experts say that decision will lead to more Māori deaths. And you've voted for the Treaty Principles Bill, which resulted in maybe the largest protest in New Zealand history. So what policy have you introduced that has made the biggest difference to improving Crown-Māori relations?
Well, I think actually we've been focusing on improving outcomes for Māori. When you look at actually Māori attendance rates at school, it's up 4%. That's good, term on term. When you look at what's been happening with respect to immunisation rates now with tamariki, that's absolutely the program of partnership we put in place before Christmas last year. I think we've had over 60,000 immunisations delivering through iwi-led health organisations.
Sorry, I'm not asking about...
When I look at emergency housing...
I'm not asking about individual Māori, though. So my question was, what policy have you introduced that's made the biggest difference to Crown-Māori relations?
Well, what I'd say is a massive focus on delivering outcomes and improving outcomes for Māori.
So
that's
again, that's not a policy, though. My question was...
But Jack, it is. Why do you say it's not?
You just said, because your answer was, what I would say is we've got a massive focus on delivering outcomes. OK, give us an outcome. Give us an outcome. What policy has made the biggest difference to Crown-iwi relations?
Well, again, us wanting to work together to actually deliver improved outcomes for Māori. Think about what we're doing in social...
That's not a policy.
But it is, Jack. Social housing, working together to build social housing for Māori is a really important thing. We've done a good job on that. We've started that work. We've got a lot more to do. We've done a good job on immunisation. That kind of matters to Māori, to be honest.
My question was what's made the biggest difference, positive difference, to Crown-Māori relations. So you said you wouldn't support the bill at the second reading. You've been really clear about that. You've described it as divisive.
Yep.
Did you anticipate this level of response to the bill?
Yes, because frustration has been building for a number of years around this issue on all sides of the debate.
You knew that we were going to get this level of response?
There is a massive frustration in the country around this issue on all sides of that debate, and a legitimate frustration.
So you consciously made a decision to support a bill through the first reading that has contributed to worsening Crown-Māori relations in New Zealand?
No, that's an important topic, so let's back up.
Can you just answer that question and then you can give us some context?
Well, what I'd say to you is that I know that this is a very divisive issue. I know that there's strong feeling and frustration on all sides of that debate, no doubt about it. That has been building for a number of years. What do you do with that frustration?
You haven't answered the question. The question is, what kind of leader makes a decision to support a bill knowing that it will contribute to worsening relations with New Zealand's Indigenous people?
What I'd say to you, Jack, is it's a leader who actually formed a government because the New Zealand people delivered an outcome through an MMP system, and we have to do compromise. And you may not like it, and I'm sure David Seymour doesn't like it because he wanted a full national referendum.
No, I'm not sure
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it because I don't like the bill at all. I don't think it's the right way to deal with race relations in this country. We came to a compromise. That is quite normal in coalition governments and MMP environments, and that will continue to be normal going forward.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. I didn't get what I wanted. David Seymour didn't get what he wanted. We came to a compromise. That's the reality of it, and I've been very straight up about that. But we're not supporting it at second reading.
No, we understand you're not supporting it. You made that really clear. So, I mean, first of all, I'm not sure that David Seymour didn't get what he wanted out of all of this.
He wanted a full national referendum.
Well, that's what he says. And this is the thing. This is what he says. But this is welcome to politics, Prime Minister. And the reason this is important is because it says so much about your negotiation skills, but also your character as a leader. You consciously agreed to a policy which you knew would worsen relations with Crown and iwi in New Zealand. So my question is this. As part of the coalition negotiations, did ACT make the treaty principles an absolute explicit bottom line?
It was a very difficult negotiation. It was the thing that took the longest to resolve. There are strong feelings on all sides of that debate.
I understand.
That's built up
they haven't
on both
answered the question there? Can you answer that question?
Well, I just said to you, we came to a compromise. We found a way through.
So my question was, did ACT make it an absolute explicit bottom line for forming a government?
Well, I'm not talking about our negotiations that happened between two parties.
ACT has. I called David Seymour this week.
That's fine. But the point is,
what do you think he said?
I'm not. The point for me is that we actually came to a compromise, and that's what you expect in an MMP government and a coalition government.
So I called David Seymour. Do you want to know what he said?
Well, I've been in negotiations with David about that issue. We disagree strongly on it.
Okay. No, I know you disagree.
Yeah.
But it's the deal that you, as a seasoned negotiator, reached. So I asked David Seymour. He confirmed that ACT didn't explicitly play the bottom line card. He said that as part of the negotiations over the Treaty Principles Bill, ACT never threatened to blow things up and go back to the polls.
Look, it was a major issue for ACT and for the National Party.
Is he being honest there?
Well, Dave, I'm just not getting into it with you, Jack. I'm not discussing conversations I have with other party leaders in a negotiation. We got to a position, as I've been very upfront about, with a compromise. No one's happy about it. Got it. But now the question is, what do you want to do about it?
If ACT wasn't playing the bottom line card, if they weren't threatening to blow it all up and go back to the polls, you didn't have to agree to this.
I disagree. This is a strong position from the ACT Party.
But it wasn't a bottom line. It wasn't a bottom line.
It was part of our compromise that we came to. So that's where we got to.
I understand it was
now
a compromise.
The question is, what do you want to do about it? And the reality is it has caused frustration, right? And I don't think a simplistic treaty principles bill that rewrites 184 years worth of history is the way you solve that. I do believe that you take it issue by issue. There are legitimate frustrations. Look at what we've done. We disagree with the Māori Health Authority. It wasn't working. It didn't deliver outcomes. It was massive bureaucracy. We didn't agree with co-governance of Three Waters. We've disbanded that. We didn't agree with actually Wellington mandated local Māori awards. We opposed it in opposition, and we've actually pushed that back to local communities. That's how you deal with the issues, by issue, case by case.
Yeah, so I'm interested in why you made the deal, right? So you as an apparently skilled and experienced negotiator, you were prepared to support maybe the most contentious policy in recent New Zealand history, although it wasn't an explicit bottom line. And you yourself say it's divisive.
It wasn't. I didn't support the proposal,
The question is, Prime Minister, why you folded on something so contentious when you didn't have to?
We didn't fold. We compromised, and we found a way through for both parties.
If you didn't push him to an absolute bottom line, that means you folded.
Yeah, I would just say to you, Jack, you weren't there. I understand what we did in the negotiations. I'm proud of the negotiations and the way we went about it. If you think about it, a lot of sceptics and a lot of media commentators and pundits would be saying this doesn't look very stable with three leaders coming together a year ago. It's proved to be a very coherent and stable government.
Yeah, except that you've just said that Crown-Iwi relations are worse than when you took over.
Sure.
And we've had the largest protest in New Zealand history.
Well, I just also say to you, though, but that they built on both sides of that debate in the under previous Labor administration. We now have.
Well, I gave you an opportunity to tell us what you've done to improve things.
But I just want to make sure you understand our position.
I understand. I think everyone understands your position.
No, but you don't, because I think the outcomes.
Do you regret agreeing to it?
No, it's the reality of MMP environment, and you have to be pragmatic and you have to have compromises. Otherwise, governments don't get formed. And that is the same if you think about a Labour, Te Pāti Māori, Greens coalition. Are you seriously going to have a separate parliament, a separate education system, separate justice system?
Well, one might expect that if the largest party was to find itself in those negotiations, that at the very least they would push their coalition partners right to a bottom line.
And what was great is that we, in those coalition agreements,
didn't push them to a bottom line.
No, but we got massive alignment on the things that all three parties were aligned around: the economy, law and order, public services.
At Wednesday's press conference, you listed off all your government's key achievements, and I noticed you didn't mention climate change. Why was that?
Well, we're on track for climate change. It's challenging. We're very committed to net zero 2050, as you know. EB Budget 1, which is the legal mechanism by which we make sure that we're doing this in 5-year chunks, has actually been delivered. EB2 will be confirmed through the emissions reduction plan, which will get released before Christmas, but we're on track for that. EB3, which is the 2030 to 2035 period.
Budgets, just to remind people.
Yeah, and the emissions budgets are designed to show us the track to net zero 2050, right? So it's really important that you deliver and balance those budgets.
So in the Climate Change Performance Index, I noted that New Zealand has dropped 7 places in the international rankings compared to when you started. We're considered a low performer. Why do you think that is?
Well, we've got work to do, but we've actually got a lot to be incredibly proud of.
Why do you think we've dropped, though? Since you became Prime Minister?
No, I just say to you.
Don't know.
But what I just say to you is that we are very, very focused on making sure we deliver net zero 2050. And we've got a good plan to do that.
Okay, so just to remind people, in the election campaign, you committed to hitting our climate targets. We've got a reminder here. This is from the election campaign. National will meet New Zealand's climate change targets.
Oh, that's a great PowerPoint you got there, Jack.
Yeah, takes a wee bit of time just to fire up, but never mind. Your draft emissions plan shows that gross emissions are higher than under the track of the previous government. Are you committed to hitting all of our climate change targets? We are committed to delivering net zero 2050, which is what we've said from the beginning. Sorry, my question is, are you committed to hitting all of our climate change targets? So the NDC target for 2030, are you committed to hitting that? Well, that's incredibly challenging, but we're going to do everything we can to hit that. But that is, just so you know, NDC 2030 is not on the same track as what net zero 2050 is, right? I'm just going from legally have emissions reductions plans and emissions budgets, right? Yeah, I'm just going from that bold promise in the election campaign last year. To be totally clear, you are not committing to hitting the 2030 NDC target. What we have committed to is delivering net zero 2050. That is non-negotiable. And so again, just really clear answer, please. NDC is a really challenging set of targets. I think the Labor government and us would both admit that. But we are going to do everything we can to drive emissions down inside New Zealand by 2030. Prime Minister, that sounds like a no. If we're talking about absolute commitments. No, well, we are doing everything we can. I understand you're doing. We've got fast-track legislation with 22 renewable electricity projects, which will be adding 30% renewables to our current capacity. It's not about doing doing everything you can. It's whether or not you're going to stick with that commitment.
Well, I'm going to do everything I can to try and deliver on that. But the reality is it is challenging. I think everyone would acknowledge that. But the thing, we are committed deeply to net zero 2050. That's the one that the country signed up for. And that's
we also signed up a nationally determined commitment.
And we know it's challenging, but we'll do everything we can to try and hit all targets. Yeah.
Hey, it's been a massive year. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Good to be with you.
We appreciate it.